Namaste, my friends. Welcome to Bhakti Yoga Conference, Grace in an Age of Distraction. My name is Happy Jack, founder of Happy Jack Yoga University and a Master of Divinity student here at Harvard. And really our vision, our intention is to bring together prominent voices on the path of Bhakti, people who are living it, studying it, breathing it, teaching it, sharing it. And that's just what it's been this past month. Monks, scholars, yogis, thought leaders, musicians, scientists, and today a chaplain, somebody who's working with people at the end of life, a very important, deep conversation. And so really our wish is that you get some insights, you get some ideas of how you can incorporate bhakti into your life and progress and move forward in your spiritual path. At the moment, over 3,900 registrants have joined us on this path. Many are catching the replays. Thank you for being here. Many of you are here live with us as well. We're going to have opportunity for questions at the end. So please, start to think, reflect, what is on your heart? But I'm going to bring our esteemed guest on to spotlight for a moment while we say a few words. Please welcome to the stage, Ghanashyam Das. Ghanashyam Prabhu is an ordained Vaishnava priest and hospital chaplain at Community Hospice and Palliative Care in Gainesville, Florida. He lived for 11 years as a brahmachari monk in New York City at the Bhakti Center before transitioning to the hospital setting and becoming a professional spiritual care provider. At New York Presbyterian Hospital, he worked conjointly with the Pastoral Care Department and Palliative Care Services for 6 years. He teaches Bhakti philosophy and meditation at several yoga studios in New York City and in Florida, and was the co-founder of End of Life Matters, an end-of-life initiative of caregivers offered at the Bhakti Center, which is a Vedic cultural center and temple located in downtown Manhattan. He also previously served as Hindu chaplain at both New York University and Columbia University. Presently, he works as a hospital chaplain at Community Hospice and Palliative Care in Gainesville, Florida. And he also serves as one of the advisors of the end-of-life care team at the Krishna Temple in Alachua, Florida. And so really, it really is such an honor to have Ghanashyam Prabhu here with us. We first connected 3 years ago. It was my first semester here at Harvard Divinity School. I was in a class with Professor Clooney, which is one of our final speakers with Radhanath Swami. And Professor Clooney, it was a Hindu spiritual care. So we were looking at like kind of Vedic spiritual care practices. And he brought you in to speak to our class via Zoom. And I just, I got to read your work in a book that was put together by Vineet Chander. I got to read some of your work there. And just seeing the way that you presented yourself, there was just something, and I've said this about just a very small select number of speakers here, but there's something about you and something about the way you present yourself and speak. It was just like, it touched my heart and is like, I can't even articulate it, but I want to be like you. When I grow up, I want to be like you. So thank you so much for your presence. And I knew from that moment, I made a note. I could still find that note saying, we've got to bring this guy to speak with our yoga community. And today's the day. Here we are at Bhakti Yoga Conference. We're honored to have you here with us. And the title of today's session is Dying to Live, Death as Teacher. My friends, if you are ready to get started with Ghanashyam Prabhu, throw your arms in the air and loudly chant, Hari Bol. Beautiful to have you here with us, Prabhu.
So grateful to be with you, Jack, with all of you. I first of all just wanted to say that you're really creating a blessing, an ongoing blessing for many people, Jack, by this endeavor in which you put together here. It's not only organized so nicely, but I've also seen how because of your kind-heartedness and your eagerness to serve other people, you're really drawing forth a lot of like beautiful jewels from so many of these presenters. I was just watching the presentation and the conversation you had with Aitreya Rishi, Prabhu, Mars.
Yeah.
And wow, what a gift to bring him on. What and a humble and wise soul he is. And, he was also sharing that this was the last chapter in his life, I was thinking about that and how it's related to this topic today. He was looking back at his life saying this is the final chapter. If you compare our lives to a book, it's hard to reflect on your life and to really see all of it in those first few chapters. But when you come to the end, you look back and see everything and you see the meaning. You see the meaning of it all. And I think he was expressing that. And that's very powerful. It's almost like it's a certain kind of consciousness of God, indirectly becoming conscious that everything had meaning. Everything was leading for my benefit to a certain place. And so anyway, just that conversation with him was very beautiful. And I'm just seeing, I think, Jack, that you yourself are, you know, you're drawing forth a lot of beautiful things from very special people. So I just want to express my gratitude to you for this effort that you're making, this endeavor, and really grateful to be part of it.
Well, thank you for your kind words. And truly, what makes it is speakers like yourself, speakers like Atreya Rishi Prabhu and you and everybody. But I really appreciate your kindness. And I think, but I've got a question I want to jump into, but I think that you wanted to really set the tone and the space and the intention with an invocation. Would you share that with us before I start jumping in with questions?
Thank you. Yes. So just a prayer offering to the previous teachers of Bhakti and followers of Bhakti. It's just a nice reminder, a nice way to start, just reminding myself that whatever I share, whatever's come into my heart was by the grace of others. And I've just trying to now be receptive to their guidance and to align my consciousness with them so that something true can come through and people can be benefited. So we'll just start with a little prayer. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम् वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Would you actually, yeah, I guess you said that's really just, sending your appreciation to your teachers and recognizing that anything that you share, what a beautiful way to start any presentation or talk is recognizing this is not something from my ego or my doing, but that it comes from those who walk the path before us. The question that we love to ask, Prabhu, and you know this because you've seen many of the recordings, is what brought you to your spiritual life? Because we see that we hear of the great work that you're doing now in palliative care and in hospital chaplaincy. And what was it that, some of the speakers were born into it, others found it later in life. What was it for yourself? How did you come to the path of bhakti?
Somehow there's some interest there when I was young, some spiritual truth and looking into that throughout my life, and especially when I was in college. I just remember after class, going to the library, the college library, and just going to the religion section, the spiritual section, and just looking around and seeing what I could experience, almost like asking God, like, share something with me. What will I find today from these books? Or, hoping that something would come to me that I could use in my life. And so I that was my thing, going to the library after class, looking around, and I remember seeing a gigantic book. And I was thinking, what is this? I turned the corner of the library and it's like 15, 16 books, but it's one book. More than that, actually. Um, and so I just grabbed it. What is this? And this is the Srimad Bhagavatam, which was, translated, and commentaries were written by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So, I just took that book. I just went with the first one and took it off the shelf. And I couldn't understand much, especially the first few verses are very philosophical and lots of names. I wasn't familiar with nothing, you know. But every now and then, just reading those commentaries, you know, Prabhupada, he had this ability just to kind of stir, stir the soul. And he's kind of urging the reader to give themselves to God, to surrender to God. I mean, that's like it's everywhere in his comments. And so I was kind of, even though I couldn't understand exactly what was happening with this book, this enormous book, every now and then I'd come across a sentence or two that I felt was really coming at me to surrender myself. And in the back of the book, it tells you where different temples are located. So I went to the back of the book and I saw that there's a list of temples where you could learn more about Krishna, this bhakti tradition. And I saw, oh, I was very close to Manhattan, just a few minutes away from Manhattan. And 26 Second Avenue is a temple there in Manhattan. The first temple, actually, in this tradition, um, once it came to the West. And so I just saw the location. I said, I'm not far from there. So I just went, hopped on the PATH train that goes from New Jersey into New York City, and got out and I walked to this location. And from there, I learned there was Bhagavad Gita classes that were going on once a week. And I just connected in that way. So yeah, that's kind of how it happened. And from there, just the interest increased and wanting to apply it to my life, and met very nice people there, very nice devotees of Krishna. And after graduating college, I spent a lot of time with them. And so that's kind of my journey. So yeah, reading some of those commentaries. And I went to my dorm room after reading, and I did a little research about Prabhupada to find out who is this person who compiled this huge book. And I found one lecture that he gave, and I kept listening to it over and over and over again when I was in school. And again, it was a similar thing. I couldn't quite catch the deeper meaning of things, but I kept listening. And then there was one thing he said that just really transformed my direction in life. But he said that we're already loving servants of God. We love Krishna, we love God, but something is interrupting that. There's an influence, there's an energy that interrupts that experience, and that's called Maya. And that was so profound for me, because I just remember days and days after that, I'm going to class, I'm doing things, I'm talking with people, and I'm thinking it's true. There's something blocking me from really expressing for me to really express love and to feel love and to know God. There's something seems to be blocking that. And it seems to be blocking everybody. What is this energy of Maya, and how to remove it? It doesn't matter how many books I read or even how sincere I try to be. If there's an energy that's covering my experience of God, then I have to know how does this remove? How is this lifted, where I can actually be who I really am, which is already a servant of God, of lover of God. So that line just stayed with me, and I kept thinking about it and meditating on it, and just became interested in knowing, how does this energy of ignorance, how is it removed? And to know also that once it's removed, there's nothing else to do. You love God. You are a servant of God. That is your nature. So things like that, things Prabhupada said just stayed with me, and I just had to keep pursuing that path.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that and just really getting a sense of what brought you to this path and to this moment here today. And I mean, there's so many questions that I would want to ask, but I want to really turn it to you to share on the topic because it's such an important topic, right? The session being dying to live, death as teacher. And of course, keeping in mind we're all at different stages. You shared a very beautiful acknowledgement to our dear friend Atreya Rishi Prabhu, who's actually on the call with us right now. And so we have certain visitors here who are in their 70s and 80s, and I see yogis on this call who are in their 20s and 30s. And yet the reality is death is something 100% guaranteed for all of us. And I've heard you speak before, Prabhu, about some of the beautiful interactions you've had with those at end of life. And yeah, I can't wait. So I'm gonna be quiet now and turn it over. Please share.
Well, I'm around death practically every day of my life because of the work I do as a hospice chaplain. And um, probably been with hundreds of people at the moment of their death as they were dying, many more people just through their whole journey of going towards death. And it's been a very intentional decision on my part to put myself in that situation, to go towards death, to remember death, to try to serve in the midst of death. I wish I could say it was out of compassion for other people, but honestly, I don't really have compassion. Therefore, I want to put myself in a situation um, where I can realize my foolishness, that I realize my incompetence, that I don't really know how to help this person here in this situation. Situation is very intense when someone is dying. And so I just keep putting myself in a situation where I realize I don't have the capacity to really help unless some drop of compassion comes into me from God, So I don't have it really. I'm not just trying to, I know I don't have it, but I want to put myself in a situation where I'm begging for just a little drop of compassion comes into me, comes through me, and I can actually serve another person at this time of need. I can know what to say, what to do, how to help. And so, I mean, that itself is like a little expression of this topic, die to live, dying to live. We have to die. We want to assert ourselves. It's my will, my desire. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to say. I'll figure it out. If that dies down, if we can die away from that and just become open to receive a higher guidance. This is a little expression of die to live. This is really what it means. There's a beautiful name for Krishna, Akinchana Gocharam. This is a very interesting name. It means he who becomes visible to one who's become nothing. Akinchana means nothing. If we can become nothing in the sense of the ego can become nothing, can decrease, so much so that the spirit is just open and receptive, then God becomes visible. God likes to become visible to that person. Akinchana Gocharam. He who becomes visible or known to a person who becomes nothing. So this is the idea of dying to live. And Radhanath Swami He was speaking to a group of us once, and he told me, everybody is dying to live. To live in this world, in this material world fully, and to assert yourself or exploit others or just do what you want to do and push yourself forward, you have to die away from the spirit to live from that consciousness, to live in that consciousness. That's also dying to live. But we want the opposite of that. We want to die away from the false ego, die away from the false self so that we can live from the spirit. But everybody is dying to live. We have these two principles in our hearts. We have this Atma, the pure spirit, the pure servant of God. And then we also have this false ego. And so for one to live, the other has to die away or become dormant. Just like the spirit, it never dies, of course, but it becomes covered and dormant so that we can live in material consciousness. But we want to go in the opposite direction. We want this false ego to diminish, akinchana, where it becomes nothing. And then one can be used by God, which is the greatest happiness in life, is when you can become, when the false ego can step aside and you are just being used in the service of God, with love for God, with love for all living beings. The mind can't even conceive of a higher ideal in life. Can you conceive of anything higher than loving and serving all living beings, loving and serving God eternally? So when we say die to live, this is what real life is. This is real living. But something has to die. So this aphorism, die to live, is completely universal. It's found in some form in every spiritual tradition, in every wisdom tradition. You know, when Plato was asked by one of his students to sum up his whole teaching in just one sentence. And he said, he didn't even need a full sentence. He just used two words. He said, practice dying. In Islam also, actually this phrase, die before dying, is attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. He says this, die before dying. And Rumi, of course, Rumi, the Sufis, he's also written so much poetry about this principle. Die before you die. I mean, this is the very theme of Christianity, death and resurrection, the main theme. I think I'm trying to remember, Jesus said many things about this, but one quote that comes to mind, he says, only if a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, will it give much fruit. And in the Vedic culture, the Vedic tradition, this principle, die to live, was so embedded in this culture that when two people, sometimes we hear of this, two people meeting each other, their greeting, what was their greeting? How did they greet each other? King Dasharath, he's the father of Lord Ramchandra. So one sage approached him, and the king greeted him by saying, Ahishtam yat tat punarjanma jayaya, which can be translated as, how are you doing with overcoming death? How's that going for you? Imagine, Jack, if I greeted you that way. Instead of just saying, how are you? What's new? How's it going? How's your work? What if we greeted each other by saying, how are you doing with overcoming death? I mean, what a culture, because it puts the essence of the spiritual path right into a simple greeting. You're reminded. You're reminded of what you're meant to be doing. So, you know, what does it really mean, dying to live? And how do you practice that throughout life? That's really the important question here. So that it's not just an interesting aphorism or statement or philosophy, and we can delight in these ideas. But now, how do you really bring it into your life? What does it mean, die to live? If you think about all those quotes and all those examples I gave, we're not actually talking about physical death. Physical death also is very powerful. And it may sometimes coincide with this deeper dying that takes place within a person. It may coincide because that moment is so powerful. It's just imagine, we want to live. We have hopes, we have dreams, we're moving forward, we have relationships, we're in the midst of relationships. And then something called death comes. It's a complete stop of everything. It brings everything to an absolute halt. And so it's so confronting. It's the ultimate confrontation. But for that very reason, it contains such power to transform you if we can face it in the right spirit. I've been, like I said, with many people at that moment. Not too long ago, I was with one lady, and she was kind of alone here in Florida. Her husband had died. She had no children. And she wasn't from this area. So she was, my visits with her, she was just appreciating being able to talk about God and to kind of reflect on her life. And at some point, even though she wanted to die at home, a friend came to check in on her. And because she had shortness of breath and appeared to be in pain, a friend called 911 and she was taken to the hospital. And so I found out, so I went to the hospital to see her. And when I walked in, she was very anxious. And the nurse told me also before entering into the room that she may pass away soon because of things that could be detected. So she was very anxious, and she saw me, and she said, and she was like, shaking a little bit and saying, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. And she was very anxious, and she was thinking of different things and saying different things. And from having so many conversations with her, I just sat with her and I said, let's call her Mary. I was saying, Mary, we've been talking about this for so many months together that when I asked you what's most important to you right now, you said God. So here's the time. Here's the moment. If you surrender to God right now, He can take away all this anxiety and all this fear. If you truly surrender, He'll do it for you. And she kept saying, she was shaking her head like, no, no, no. And I was saying, everything is coming from God. This too, this process of dying is coming from God. You're completely safe. Just surrender yourself to God. And she said, how? How do I do it? How do I do that? What does that mean? She kept saying, what does that mean? What does that mean? I said, just tell God, you can put your hands like this, pray to God, say, God, I am yours. God, I am yours. And so she tried that. She put her hands together and she closed her eyes and she just kept saying, almost like a mantra. She kept saying, God, I am yours. God, I am yours. And I said, Jesus, when he was also on the cross, one of the last things he said was, God, I give to you my spirit. So just give yourself in surrender to God. And she kept saying, God, I'm yours. And I saw her face became relaxed and she stopped shaking. She became very peaceful. And then she just fell asleep. And I just stayed with her in the room for a few minutes. And the nurse came in and I told the nurse she fell asleep. The nurse said she didn't fall asleep, she died. And I looked at her and she died like this. If you could see, I'll describe, but she died with her hands held together in prayer, in the form of prayer, completely peaceful, and repeating over and over before that moment came, God, I am yours. You can do with me as you wish. I'm yours. I surrender to you. So usually what I see in this journey towards death for many people, there's resistance. And then there's sometimes resignation, where you just kind of give up. But there's other possibilities. If we practice through life, um, you know, surrender. Resistance can look like surrender. Sometimes people just resist, they just had enough of life, enough suffering, and they resist dying in different ways. But then you may also just give up. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a conscious, voluntary surrender throughout life. So when that moment comes, you've done it so much already. So when that intense moment of death comes, if we're fortunate enough, blessed to be in the proper state where we can still focus on this, then we just give ourselves completely to God. But that will be very difficult if we don't try that throughout our lives. Sometimes the mercy comes. Sometimes that physical death, that moment is so powerful that we may be able to go from these stages of resisting it to accepting it and to surrendering. But there must be something, there must be a way to prepare now while we're living. Prabhupada used to quote this Bengali, I think it's a Bengali proverb. Sadhana karo, bhajana karo, marte janale hoy. He said, the practice that you've been doing, whatever you've been focusing on throughout life, and the practice and the cultivation, all of that will be tested at the time of your death. So there is a preparation. There is something that we can do here and now. You don't have to become a chaplain and put yourself around death. That's also good to be around it because we fear it. So we want to walk towards it rather than away from it. We want to think about it, not in a sense of getting, panicking or getting frightened in some way, but really just looking with open eyes. This is also a reality of life. It's more than just, it's an amazing opportunity. It has such power, but there's a great fear of it. In Sanskrit, the fear of death, sometimes you see in some of the yoga literature, the word used is abhinivesha. Abhinivesha is being translated as the fear of death. But if you look at that word closely, that Sanskrit word, what's there? You don't see the word fear. You don't see the word death even. So what does abhinivesha really mean? It's like a deep-rooted instinct to cling to life. That's what it means. And if you make that negative, it means the fear of death. But it's very deep-rooted. We want to ignore it. We get into this habit of ignoring, avoiding, and it gets pushed down so deep into our consciousness. You could say it goes into the subconscious where you can no longer reach it. You can no longer deal with it. If something's right in front of you, you can deal with it directly. But if something gets pushed down so far by continuous avoiding, then it's in a place that's very hard to get to, but it still has an influence on your whole life, even more so when it's in a very dark, hidden place. It's even more powerful how it affects you. There's always a background anxiety, always a background fear that's with us in life. It's the fear of death. But it's pushed so far down, but it controls us even more powerfully from there. So we want to be around it. We want to be able to focus on it. Many philosophers, this was, Greek philosophers and so forth, they would speak also of always study death. I've always had this interest in life. What is death? What happens after death? What is the meaning in death? So, what is the practice now? Practice dying. The key to doing this is we have to understand that death has many forms. What is death? Death has many forms. Death means loss. It means some disappointment, some failure, sickness. These are all little deaths that come to us throughout life, right? So if you just think, okay, if you're just trying to meditate on the lying in the bed at the time of death, that's not as powerful as realizing that death, there are many little deaths throughout our whole life. And the whole key to it is, how am I facing that little death right now? Think right now, everybody listening, what's a little death that you're going through right now? Some fear, some loss, some pain, some conflict. These are all little deaths coming to us, little opportunities coming. And the whole question is, how am I responding? How do I respond? We're considering all these little deaths as interrupting my life. That's a big mistake, to consider it an interruption of your life. It's the key to your life. It's the key that opens a door to truly live. So as it comes to us in these different forms, you know, if you take something as an interruption in your life, immediately, as soon as it comes to you, you feel resentment. We resent our problems when they come, right? It's a resentment. And then feeling that resentment, we react from that resentment. We don't like it, so I don't want this, I'll avoid it, I'll resist it. Or here comes a conflict, I don't want this, and then we fight the conflict with more conflict. Or we become angry. Or we blame others for what's happening to us. These are all false ego reactions coming from resentment. Because, and if you think about it, what or who are we resenting? Some difficulty comes into my life. Immediately I feel a resentment. This shouldn't be happening. This goes against what I want. And then we react from that resentment. Anger, blame, causing pain to others because pain has come to me. Or I'll try to just avoid it, not think about it, resist it. So all of those reactions are springing from a resentment. And what are we resenting? Who are we resenting? It's actually our resentment towards God, because this is his system. This material creation is also given by God. He's supreme. He's benevolent. There's no mistakes. It's not an accident. He's giving exactly what's necessary so that we can return. What does the word religion mean? It's very beautiful, actually. It just means to return, to reunite with God. So everything is for that purpose. So when some little death comes to you, the little death you're going through right now, the outer surface can be a little harsh, but the core and the nucleus of that little death that's coming to you is an offering, is a grace, is an opportunity. So when it comes, instead of fighting it or resisting it or becoming reactive with anger, with blame, what if we could just take it in, take a moment? Let me face this with integrity. Let me remember God in this. Let me pray while this is happening to whatever I'm going through. Let me pray, God, let this change me. Let this transform me. You know, because it has power in it. Suffering has power in it. I remember one of my chaplain mentors. You might think a chaplain goes into a situation where someone's suffering and someone's afraid, and they're going to make it better. No, that's not really what a chaplain should do. Try to find ways to say the right thing and to make everything nice. Sometimes, he said, you want to have faith in suffering. Have faith. Be with them in that suffering. Be with a person who's suffering. Don't immediately try to think how to solve it. Allow it to do its work. It's actually a purifying process, but it's usually not purifying for us because we don't come with this understanding. We see it as an interruption. It's something I don't want, and we struggle with it. And actually we suffer more by that process. But if you can take it in such a way, and this is very practical, think right now, there's a little death we're all going through. Something is happening. This is life. Life, you get sometimes some joys, and you also get some sorrow. You get moments of peace, and you also get conflict. And you can only get what you really want. If you really want peace, yeah, say you want peace. But life gives peace sometimes and also gives conflict. And if you keep avoiding the conflict, or you keep fighting conflict with conflict, will you ever get the peace that you want? You can't. You actually have to be willing and capable of going through the opposite of what you want to get what you want. Suppose you want joy. And this is what die to live means. Because if you truly want to live, what does that mean? To really live. Real life. What is real life? You have to be willing and capable of going through death. If you want real joy, you have to be willing and capable of going through sorrow in the right spirit, in the right way. If you want peace, you have to be willing to go through conflict in the right spirit, in the right way. And then what happens is, because now you're facing everything that's coming in life, you're not resenting what's being sent to you, but you're accepting it, then you begin to arise above these dualities of the little peace, the little joy, the little peace, the little conflict, the little joy, the little sorrow. You rise above and you come to a platform which is above both those alternating dualities. And you really come to what, then you really understand what peace is. Then you really understand what life is. So there's a beautiful tool I want to give you from the scripture that tells you how to deal, how to face the little sufferings, the little deaths that are coming. And I feel like this verse from the Bhagavad Purana, it contains everything. There's so much there. I'll just give you the verse and then I'll read it. And then we can also be happy if there's some reflections or some comments from some of you. But I want to leave you with this because, at least for myself, it gives you everything of what the state of consciousness that when little deaths come, to face them in the right spirit, so that when death comes, you've already done this so many times, then this response will be natural and flow. And the fact is, if we actually can truly embrace this verse and what's in this verse, then that will be your last death, your last physical death, because now you've entered the plane of life, which is above this lower level, which has life and death again and again. You see, that's coming and going. Everything in this material world is just coming and going, coming and going. But there's a plane of existence where life has no opposite. Well, just like, for example, we might say, life means like, you know, I walk around outside. I go outside today, and there's daytime and nighttime, and daytime and nighttime. Here's the alternating of the duality. Light and darkness comes again and again. And we might think, well, that's true. But is it really true? It's only relatively true. Day and night, day and night. If you are able to come up to the level of the sun and the sky, then you're always standing in the light. So we can say light and darkness is a reality, but it's only a reality from my lower relative position. If I could come before the sun, live there, then it's always light. So these lower dualities, they're true and they're real and they're happening when we face them in the right spirit, especially the suffering, the little deaths, but also even the pleasures. That also we have to have the right, we have to receive those in the right way. Then we rise above. So this is what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Dvandva moha nirmukta, that if one can rise above these dualities, another verse just came to mind, but samadukkha sukham dhiram, one who's poised in the face of the dualities. Such a person becomes kalpate, means eligible. They become eligible. Amrita vaya kalpate. They become eligible to rise above death, to overcome death. And real bhakti begins when we can start to rise a little above the alternating dualities of this material world. Then bhakti really begins. Krishna says this. Yes. So here's the verse that I wanted to give. This is from the Bhagavat Purana. And I just printed out the Sanskrit here and the English translation. But it's so nice. So when little deaths come, as they always do, how do we meet it? This is the most powerful way to prepare for death. It says, Tate nukampam susamikshamano bunjana evatma kritam vipakam hritvagva purbir videdan namaste jivete yo mukti pade sadayabak. So this is like a prayer coming from the heart of a person when something is coming, something difficult is coming in life. So this is the prayer. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits and longs for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation. This person is surely eligible to overcome death and to be free, to be liberated. For it has become his rightful claim. If you live this way, and if we look at the Sanskrit, every word is so loaded with meaning. It says bunjana, which means one has to patiently endure whatever comes in life, whatever difficulty. So a patient endurance. Why do I patiently endure things that are coming? And this verse says atma kritam, because after all, whatever is coming to me was self-produced. It's coming from me. I've created it, and now here it comes as a reaction. And so let me patiently endure it and not have a false ego reaction towards it, which keeps it in motion. If you react with the false ego, you stay locked in, entangled in action and reaction. But if you think, this is self-produced, what's coming, let me patiently endure through it. Okay, but that wouldn't be enough if the verse ended there. It's just basically telling you how to deal with some suffering. You accept it. You accept it with integrity, patience. But it says here, samikshama no, and you sincerely long for God's grace to come into you in those moments. Those moments give you the opportunity. You become desperate when suffering comes. There's an opening in the heart. And so the prayer, the longing is there. God, please, only by your blessing can I get through this? Can I be changed by this? This is meant to change us. So samikshamano anukampam, your great mercy, a drop of your mercy may it come into me. What else is here? Vidadan namaste. And all the while, this person who's going through this experience is offering their obeisances, their humble respects to God. How? Hrit vag vapu. Through their heart, means their attitude. Through their words, they're also saying words. They're speaking to God, prayer. And vapu, through their bodies, also they're offering love and respect to God. What does that mean? I mean service through your body. God, how can I serve you? Even in this situation, this difficult situation, is there some opportunity where I can serve you? Use your body, use your heart, use your mind, use everything. And everything is in this position of offering to the Lord. And then this verse ends, Jiveta, one who lives in this way. If one can live in this way, and we get so many opportunities, but if one begins to live in this way, mukti pade, then they become freed from the cycle of birth and death. They overcome death and truly live. So when we say die to live, this is what real life is. Can you conceive of a higher kind of life where you're operating from pure love, spontaneous love is flowing through you, and therefore you're directing that love towards God. And when you look at the living beings of this world, that same love takes the form of compassion and service to them as well. And it's such a high state of consciousness. It's so high. The vibration is so high, so fast, that it's actually eternal. And you don't even care about death anymore. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita in the 8th chapter, he tells Arjuna, we'll end here, he tells Arjuna, when you die, there are two possibilities. One person returns again and again, and the other person becomes free from birth and death. But then, in the next verse, he describes a third category. If you look closely, he says, but my devotee, those who are yoga yukta, those who are united to me, and they're devoted to me, they don't care for either one of these. Returning or becoming free also from it. Because they are yoga yukta, they are fixed in just my service. They are fixed in loving service to me, that they're not preoccupied with what will happen after death. Will I be liberated, or will I have to return? You stop caring for this when your mind and your soul is engaged in the loving service of God. You stop caring about your outcomes, all outcomes. You're so fixed in loving service that you're satisfied. Only that pure devotee of God can experience that level of life and living. So, this is really the ideal of life that we should always be striving for. And this comes by facing the little deaths that are coming to us always. So tune in. At the end, Atreya Rishi Prabhu, and he was also mentioning, that reflecting on his life, the final chapter of his life, one day is also like a whole life. So even at the end of your day, before you go to sleep, there's a saying, sleep is the sister of death. There's a great similarity with one day and one whole life. Right? Think about it. You wake up in the morning, it's like a birth. And then comes midday, you're active, you're doing things, just like the middle of your life. And then you start to grow tired at the end of the day. This is like old age. You're also getting tired. The body can do less. And then finally, the end of the day, you lie down in a bed and you close your eyes and you let go. Just like at the end of one life, you also usually are in a bed and you close the eyes and you let go. So I say this because we can reflect each day, each night before you go to sleep. I don't always do this, but often I do this. Before I go to sleep, I'm lying there in my bed and I look at the day. I look at the day, not in a mood of judging myself, just see, was I awake spiritually? Was I applying this die to live? I had moments, I missed some opportunities, but here I took the opportunity. So then close your eyes and go to sleep and do it again and again, because this is what death is. When death comes, if we've trained ourselves in this way, and it's not a forced training, it should become spontaneous, but things don't just automatically, usually they're not spontaneously immediately. We have to have some practice and we have to have some grace and mercy to flow through us to where it becomes actually natural. And it can become natural in this life. And then we can die in total peace and be in a state of eternal living. Whether I'm in the spiritual world or material world, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm in the consciousness of loving service. This is the heart of bhakti. So grateful to be with all of you, and I'll be really happy to hear from some of you and learn from you.
Ghanashyam Prabhu, thank you so much for sharing. I'm just so inspired by the way you present yourself. I feel like when you speak, it brings me to tears. And there's a handful of people in my life that somehow I feel like it's somehow just channeling truth. So thank you for sharing your presence with us. So I'll just share something before we take a couple of reflections. It seems we all have a different nature in a sense. When I think about myself, and like I know I couldn't be a doctor or a paramedic. It just seeing something on TV, it's really hard for me to look at. If I'm getting a needle, I look away and so I just, there's that. And there's also this fear I have of death. If when as you mentioned, when Atreya Rishi Prabhu, when he said that on the call, that this is my final chapter, I got all shaky inside. I started crying. I had to hold it together just thinking about him not being here. And I could turn it on in a second if I thought about my parents and one day when they're not here. And I just recognize this deep attachment that I have, to people in my life. And I just think it's so beautiful, the work that you do, and the just to imagine, especially a woman like you shared that's alone, and to be able to help to facilitate a transition like that. That's some of the most beautiful, important work ever. And I would have many questions, but I want to save time for others. But just thank you so much. Like you just, this is what I remember 3 years ago, and although it was a completely different topic, and there's just something about you. Thank you. But let's get Sarah and George on the line. Kent, UK, welcome.
Hi.
Right.
Thank you. That was amazing.
It was,
Yeah, really
incredible,
moving.
incredible.
Sarah and George, I feel like I know you because I've seen you in different questions. I
yeah.
appreciate
Ah,
also
hello.
your eagerness to also learn and to share also. Thank you.
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
very,
we
very
love
keen
to,
learn.
we always have a question.
Keen to learn. So I'm just wondering how how can you comfort an atheist? So if you have a loved one who's an atheist,
And we have a lot.
we have most of our family are atheists. They do not believe in God. They do not believe in souls. So how can you comfort them? Because recently we had, for example, Sarah's nan passed away recently, and she actually said she was scared to die. And my father passed away, and I spent 2 weeks at his bedside in the hospital where he was just unconscious the entire time. So I'm just wondering how do we approach those two situations where they have zero faith whatsoever? What's your advice?
You have to have some aspect of God coming through you. You don't have to speak about it. But if you are there with a loving presence, again and again, you keep making yourself available and you keep showing up and you keep hearing and you give them and you question, you can seek from God within your own heart how to serve this person. And if you're actually in that mood, what happens is they don't know it, but you're giving them some faith and goodness. You're giving them some faith and love, which is it's actually faith in God, but they don't know it because He's the source of all this. So you don't have to think of the perfect thing to say to kind of convert an atheist into suddenly, but you could be this example where you're praying so sincerely for God to come through you that he can come through you. And that person will always appreciate that because what is it? What has to come through and what will they experience? They can experience being understood. They can experience someone sharing in their experience, even if it's painful. Someone, sometimes, like I said, I often can't connect to this and I don't have compassion when I see many people. But one thing I can do is I can keep making myself available. They'll see my face again next week. Somebody cares. I'll come again and I'll sit there and maybe I don't know what to say or what to do, but here I am again. And what happens? People just start to see, wow, my life may have been tough. I'm struggling in different ways, but there's goodness exists. And maybe, it's giving people faith in goodness, which is actually faith in God.
Yeah.
And so don't think too hard about the right thing to say or how to, but just enter into that consciousness yourself. And it's easier to do it in those moments when you're desperate, when it's difficult, when you don't know what to say or what to do. It's easier, even though it's intuitively we may think it's harder. But because you're desperate, you're just like I said, I go to some of these homes and I don't know the family and the dynamics, and I don't know this person. I feel so at a loss of what to do, what to say. But because of that, I'm just in my heart, I'm just saying, please, Krishna, please guide me. It's the only way I can serve here. And then something comes through, and that person will experience God without them even knowing it. and giving them a little faith, a little trust that love is higher than death, that goodness is higher than death. It overcomes death. So
That was fantastic. Just really quickly, that quote that you gave, do you have the actual quotation? Because I wanted to read it again. Do you have that?
yes, this is so it's from the Bhagavat Purana, which is also called Srimad Bhagavatam. It's from
Yep.
the 10th canto,
Hmm.
14th chapter,
Yep.
8th verse.
Great. I haven't got that far. I'm on 4.
Oh, okay, good,
I'll
good.
get
Yeah,
there.
no, many good things to come also.
Yeah, thank you. That's fantastic. Thanks
Thanks
for
for
your help.
advice.
Oh,
I was on mute. Thank you so much, Sarah and George, sending our love. Beautiful question, beautiful response. We're at time, but we got one more hand. I'd love to bring Hun on here as well for a reflection, a final reflection. Welcome, Hanna, from Oslo, Norway, currently.
Hi, namaste. Thank you so much for this beautiful space that you have created for us. I feel like this is like food to my soul. I'm a widow since 18 years. So I was 31 years when my husband died, and I raised our boys alone. So I feel like all things death and grief and God um is so liberating to hear deep conversations because our society, in my experience, has a tendency of look away. Whereas I love how you say that there are so many opportunities to die, little deaths all the time. And what I wanted to kind of think about is the idea of duality or the resentment we have for God. Like that's certainly something that I can relate to, and it comes up over and over again. How can this happen? How is it that we have this duality? I can I can accept my own death, but I can't accept my husband's death because of our children. Things like that will come up still 18 years later. And it's hurtful when people say, "Oh, you should get over it," because that's not how life works. You don't get over things. It's an opportunity. I love the way you put this, and that's what I hear in what you're sharing. And I want to also mention quickly, we had a lecture with Venkata, with who I assume you wrote the book with, the
Venkata
Hindu.
Bhatta, yeah.
Yes. And his lecture was mind-blowing to me because he would share the chapter 11 from the Gita, and we got to kind of see and experience God and death. And I find that's my experience of that lecture, and I loved it because it takes the duality away. Like what dies goes back into God. And I find that there's some relief in that. And would you say that is then the other level of like at the level of the sun versus day and night, that we're like trapped in this rat race. But then when we read scripture like that, we can see the 10,000 suns that Krishna is. D- does that make
Yes,
sense what I'm
absolutely,
asking?
absolutely. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, I am death,
Mm,
which is very interesting. He's also life, but he's also death. So when these little deaths come, that's what I was saying in the, if you could go to the core of what's really there, what's being offered, God is also there. But it's a journey to really be able to, it's a journey through different stages sometimes of really discovering that whatever is coming to me is just the perfect thing, even painful. And like you said, it's not about getting over the loss of a loved one. But what happens is to do it really in the right way, what should happen is that hard pain should turn into a soft pain.
mm-hmm.
That's all. It does, the pain doesn't go away,
Yeah.
but it softens. You can reflect now and think of your husband
Yeah,
and
that's so wonderful.
gratitude. And it just softens. It doesn't go away. And that itself is the healing. So don't people think like, yeah, you have to get over the pains that you've been through. It's not about getting over. It's the quality of the pain softens. And one starts to, even in that, even remembering that it hurts, but it's also God is there.
Yeah, it's
Healing is
like a
there.
sweet surrender, like you said,
Exactly.
every night or in moments of despair. That's when we get to that sweet nectar of surrender. And we can practice it in the little deaths. And I love how you said we can practice it at night, or
Mm.
where we just surrender to the whole paradigm that has been created for us. I see that. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Hanna. Sending our love, gratitude over to Oslo, Norway.
Thanks. There's a lot of sweet pain here.
Beautiful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for being real and sharing your story so beautifully. Ghanashyam Prabhu. Wow. I'm in awe. I'm so grateful that we had this conversation and got to share this. And I can just see the engagement, the impact that you're having and the importance of the work you're doing. Is there you're not an easy guy to find online. You don't have a bunch of websites and social media and stuff, and I respect that. Is there some way though that some of us that might want to learn about your work or contact you, is there any way to do that?
I'd be happy. You could share my email with anyone who might want it for some reason. A lot of friends of mine and devotees of Krishna, although, sometimes when someone is passing away in their family and they want to be there and support, a lot of questions come my way. I do my best to just respond and share whatever I've learned. And so, yeah, happy to be available in that way. But yeah, otherwise, not much else.
That's
You
beautiful.
can come to Alachua where I live. Happy to have spend time with you and have some meal together.
Beautiful. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Prabhu, for taking the time. My heart is full. I'm so inspired, and thank you for being here. And thank you all who have joined us and who are catching the recording. My friends, we got another session tomorrow. So until we meet again, make it an amazing day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Yeah.
Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare